Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Text 51 to 53. Buddhaya Vishuddhaya Yukto धत्या आत्मनम नियम्य च
तो उस जगह पे हम सोचे
विषाम से त्यक्त्वा राग देशो विदुष्य च
चले जाता तो सबसे बड़ा लॉस है
विविक्त सेवी लघुवाशी यत वाक काय मानस ध्यान योग परो नित्यम वैराग्यम समुपाश्रित अहंकारम बलम दर्पम कामम क्रोधम परिग्रहम विमुच्य निर्मम शांतो ब्रह्म भूयाय कल्पते.
Being purified by his intelligence and controlling the mind with determination, giving up the objects of sense gratification, being freed from attachment and hatred, one who lives in a secluded place, who eats little, who controls his body, mind, and power of speech, who is always in trance and who is detached, free from false ego, false strength, false pride, lust, anger, and acceptance of material things, free from false proprietorship, and peaceful, such a person is certainly elevated to the position of self-realization.
Text 54. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati tamaha sarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param.
One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. He never laments or desires to have anything. He is equally disposed toward every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me.
Text 55. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavan yaschashmi tatvata tato mam tatva ato gyatva vishte tad anantaram.
One can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only by devotional service, and when one is in full consciousness of me, by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God.
Text 56. Sarva karmanya api sada kurvano mad vyapashraya mat prasadat avapnoti shashvatam padam avyayam.
Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my pure devotee, under my protection, reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace.
Text 57. Chetasa sarva karmani mai sanyasa matpara buddhi yogam upashritya machittat satatam bhava.
In all activities, just depend on me and work always under my protection. In such devotional service, be fully conscious of me.
Text 58. Machitah sarva durgani mat prasadat tarishyasi ath chet tvam ahankaran nashroyasi vinankhasi.
If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditioned life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness but act through false ego and not hearing me, you will be lost.
Text 59. Yad ahankaram ashritya na yotsa iti manyase mithyesha vyavasayaste prakartis tvam niyokshati.
If you do not act according to my direction and do not fight, then you will be falsely directed. By your nature, you will have to be engaged in warfare.
Text 60. स्वभाव जैन कौन्तेय निबद्ध स्वेन कर्मणा कर्तुम नेच्छसि यन्मोहात् करिष्यसि अवशोपितः.
Under illusion, you are now declining to act according to my direction. But, compelled by the work from born of your own nature, you will act all the same, O son of Kunti.
Text 61. ईश्वरः सर्वभूतानां हृददेशे अर्जुन तिष्ठति भ्रामयन् सर्वभूतानि यन्त्रारूढानि मायया.
The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjun, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy.
Text 62. तमेव शरणं गच्छ सर्वभावेन भारत तत्प्रसादात् परां शान्तिं स्थानं प्राप्स्यसि शाश्वतम्.
O sign of Bharat, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and eternal abode.
Text 63. इति ते ज्ञानम् आख्यातं गुह्यात् गुह्यतरं मया विस्मये तद् अशेषेण यथेच्छसि तथा कुरु.
Thus I have explained to you knowledge still more confidential. Deliberate on this fully, and then do what you have wished to do.
Text 64. सर्वगुह्य तमं भूय शृणु मे परमं वच इष्टो अशी मे दृढम् इति ततो वक्ष्यामि ते हितम्.
Because you are my very dear friend, I am speaking to you my supreme instruction, the most confidential knowledge of all. Hear this from me, for it is for your benefit.
Text 65. मन्मना भव मद्भक्तो मध्याजी मां नमस्कुरु माम एव वश्यसि सत्यं ते प्रतिजाने प्रियो असि मे.
Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend.
Text 66. सर्वधर्मान् परित्यज्य मामेकं शरणं व्रज अहं त्वां सर्वपापेभ्यो मोक्षयिष्यामि मा शुच.
Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful actions. Do not fear.
Text 67. Idam te na tapaskaya na bhaktaya kadachana na chashu shushve vacham na cha mam yo abhyasuyati.
This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me.
Text 68. Ya idam param guhyam madbhakteshva abhidhasyati bhaktim mai param kritva mam ev ishyati asanshaya.
The one who explains this supreme secret to the devotees, pure devotional service is guaranteed, and at the end, you will come back to me.
Text 69. Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakratama bhavita nache ma tasmada anyah priyataro bhuvi.
There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there ever be one more dear.
Text 70. Adhyeshate chaya imam dharmyam samvadam avayo ज्ञान यज्ञेन तेनाहम् इष्टः स्याम् इति मे मति.
And I declare that he who studies this sacred conversation of ours worships me by his intelligence.
Text 71. Shraddhavan anusuyascha shanuyad api yo nara so api muktah shubhalokan prapnuyat punya karmanam.
And one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reactions and attains to the auspicious planets where the pious dwell.
Text 72. Kaschit etat shrutam patha tve ekagrena chetasa kaschit ajnanah sammoha pranashtaste dhananjaya.
O son of Pritha, O conqueror of wealth, have you heard this with an attentive mind? And are your ignorance and illusions now dispelled?
Text 73. Arjun Uvacha Nashtamoha Smritirlabdha Tvat Prasadan Mayachyuta Sthito Asmi Gat Sandeha Karishe Vachanam Tava.
Arjun said, my dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy. I am now firm and free from doubt and am prepared to act according to your instructions.
Text 74. Sanjay Uvacha Iti aham vasudevasya parthasya cha mahatmana samvadam imam ashrosham adbhudam rom harshanam.
Sanjay said, thus I have heard the conversation of two great souls, Krishna and Arjun, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end.
Text 75. Vyas prasadach shrutuvan etad guhyam aham param yogam yogeshwarat krishnat shakshat kathyata swayam.
By the mercy of Vyas, I have heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjun.
Text 76. Rajan Sansmrite Samvadam Imam Adbhutam Keshava Arjunyo Punyam Rashyami Cha Muhurmuhu.
O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjun, I take pleasure, being thrilled at every moment.
Text 77. Taccha Sansmrite Rupam Ati Adbhudam Hare Vismayo me Mahan Rajan Rashyami Cha Punah Punah.
O King, as I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with wonder more and more, and I rejoice again and again.
Text 78. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno Yatra Partho Dhanurdhara Tatra Shri Vijayo Bhutir Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama.
Wherever there's Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there's Arjun, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion.
Om Tat Sat Iti Shri Bhagavad-Gita Supnishastu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishnarjun Samvade Shraddha Traya Vibhag Yogo Nam Ashtadasho Adhyaya. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, Anita Mataji and Chitralekha Mataji. It was wonderful recitation. I'm sure everybody has enjoyed hearing the Sanskrit verses and English translation. How purifying it is every time when we hear verse by verse and in one go. So thank you very much for this service. We will go to the see the verse for today. Okay. hope everybody is able to see my screen now.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Thank you very much for confirming. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 18, 67th verse. Idam te na tapaskaya, idam te na tapaskaya, na bhaktaya kadachana, na chashurshve pachyam, na chamam yo bhayasuyati, idam te na tapasakya, na bhaktaya kadachana, na chashurshve pachyam, na chamam yo abhasuyati. So, translation. This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Persons who have not undergone the austerities of the religious process, who have never attempted devotional service in Krishna consciousness, especially those who are conscious of Krishna only as a historical personality, or who are envious of the greatness of Krishna, should not be told this most confidential part of knowledge. It is, however, sometimes found that even demoniac persons who are envious of Krishna, worshipping Krishna in a different way, take to the profession of explaining Bhagavad-Gita in a different way to make business. But anyone who desires actually to understand Krishna must avoid such commentaries on Bhagavad-Gita. Actually, the purpose of Bhagavad-Gita is not understandable to those who are sensuous. Even if one is not sensuous, but is strictly following the disciplines enjoined in the Vedic scriptures, if he is not a devotee, he also cannot understand Krishna. And even when poses himself as a devotee of Krishna, but is not engaged in Krishna consciousness activities, he also cannot understand Krishna. There are many persons who envy Krishna because he has explained in Gita that he is the supreme and that nothing is above him or equal to him. There are many persons who are envious of Krishna. Such persons should not be told of Bhagavad Gita, or they cannot understand. There is no possibility of faithless persons understanding Bhagavad Gita and Krishna. Without understanding Krishna from the authority of a pure devotee, one should not try to comment upon Bhagavad Gita. Om Ajnanam Timirandasya Gyananjana Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uta Padakamalam Shri Gurum Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitam Cha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenbandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Shri Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishbhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advait Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. This confidential knowledge may never be explained to those who are not austere, devoted, or engaged in devotional service, nor to one who is envious of me. So we can see that we are almost nearing to the close or end of Bhagavad Gita dialogues or conversations between Krishna and Arjuna. And Krishna has already explained about the modes of material nature. He has explained various kinds of influences of these modes of nature and what kind of qualities they generate among the conditioned soul. He has also explained about devotional services. He has explained about karma, about actions that we need to do, we don't need to do, renunciation. So he's given a lot of knowledge in chapter 18 itself, between now and from verse 1 till verse 66. Now, we know this famous verse that Srila Prabhupada often quoted, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Gyanvan Mam Prapadyante Vasudev Sarvamiti Samatma Sudurlabha. This devotion service is actually very, very rare. Now, somebody can read this verse and say, isn't it that Krishna being little, slightly unkind, that those who are envious don't tell them about this, transcendental subject matter? We have to understand what is the backdrop of all of this and why Krishna has to put these lines in Bhagavad Gita. Why is it that envious people would not be able to understand what is being told to them about Krishna? And why is it that those who are not austere, devoted, or engaged in devotional service will not be able to understand Krishna? We have to see the entire context in totality, the picture in totality. When living entity was with Krishna in its original state in the spiritual world, when he saw the material energy, which appeared to be to be very luring to him, because material energy is inferior energy of Krishna, and external energy, but inferior energy. And the living entity, obviously being a spiritual soul, it is superior to the inferior energy of Krishna, which is this material world. When the living entity looks at the material energy, feels like, oh, I wish I can also control it, because it feels like you can control it. Krishna cannot be controlled, except for Krishna can be controlled by love. But here, the desire that comes into the living entity's heart, that gives the feeling that I want to control. And when the living entity wants to become controller, which means he wants to become God. God means controller, Ishvara. Ishvara means controller. Because you can't control everything. God can control everything. Living entity is given an opportunity to control minute little things according to his capacity, which is insignificant, actually. But still, he's given the simulation that you are a controller. Even though Krishna wants the living entity, please don't leave me. Don't go to this material world. It's pathetic. You will suffer. I know everybody suffers there. It's dukkale mashashvatam. Only thing that you'll get there is miseries. But that lure, attraction pulls living entity, and he ends up coming to this material world. Now, this gradually develops into this matsarya, which is enviousness of God. Now, this enviousness towards God is then reflected into everything that a living entity is doing in the material world. He becomes envious of, this enviousness reflects into his thinking, willing, and feeling. He's unable to tolerate success of others. He's unable to tolerate beauty of others. He's unable to tolerate any kind of something which is more superior to him. This way, the enviousness towards Krishna is then reflected into being envy for everything. Now, with such a heart, somebody is sitting and competing with God. Will he hear the glorification of that person who is competing with? There's no way that he can accept that. And therefore, this knowledge, if explained to that person, he will not be able to gain out of it. Rather, he will further blaspheme the Lord. He will further do what do you call aparadh to the Lord. And therefore, it is advisable not to share this confidential knowledge with somebody who is so envy. Now, we understand that this enviousness is majorly depicted in its full manifestation in the bodies of the demons, those who openly declare war against Krishna. We have plenty of them. They could not see the success of the devotees, like Hiranyakashipu. He became so envious that he felt himself completely out of control. When little devotee Prahlad Maharaj could not be killed by his any amount of effort. And finally, he eventually saw the Lord, but in the form of death. Similarly, we can see how Ravan was most envious of Lord Ram, and how, even though he was warned by his own, he still kidnapped Mother Sita, because he was so envious of the Lord that he wanted to enjoy his energy, his consort, Sita Maharani. So ultimately, he faced the Lord as a death blow. On his navel, he was pierced with the arrow, and he had to accept the death. We see how Shishupal in Krishna Lila, he was so envious of Krishna. When Shishupal was born, he was born with his third eye, and his mother was perplexed as to what to do. No, sorry, he was born with extra pair of hands. So they were worried as to what will happen to this boy. And finally, his mother took a promise. His mother got a Akashvani, voice from the sky, saying that one who will take him in his lap, by doing that, if the false arms fall away, that's the person who will also kill this particular child. So every time anyone will pick up Shishupal, then their parents will look at him, look at Shishupal, and if arms doesn't fall off, the false arms, and they'll say, oh, how will he get cured? And one day when Krishna visited with Balram to his aunt's house with the Shishupal's mother, the arms fell off as soon as he took him in his lap. So Shishupal's mother became became happy and in anxiety. Why, Krishna, why? Amongst all the people in the world, will you kill him? Give me a promise that you won't kill him. And Krishna says that, although I cannot give you this promise that I won't kill him, but I give you the promise that any time and every time he make an offense, up to 100 offenses, I will not kill him. And then his mother, Shishupal's mother, was pacified. And we know that how in Rajasuya Yagya ceremony, when Krishna was chosen to be worshipped as the most honorable guest of the assembly, how Shishupal stood up and started blaspheming Krishna. He started saying bad words to Krishna. He started defying Krishna's authority openly to everybody. And Krishna was smiling away. Krishna was smiling away. Arjuna stood up. Yudhishthira Maharaj stood up. Bhishma was about to shut him. But Krishna was every time giving his action, giving his signal by his hands, don't worry about it. And he was waiting. He was waiting. When will he come to 100? And then Krishna can sever his head. And as the providence has already declared, when Shishupal was doing his 100th blasphemy to Krishna, saying bad words to him, Sudarshan took the liberty and goes straight down to Krishna's to Shishupal's neck and strikes away the neck from the body. And that was the end of Shishupal. Now, the beauty of everything is that when they are killed by Krishna like this, even they are most envious, they go and merge in Krishna's body, which is like a Sayujya Mukti. Because they are killed by Krishna, they become one with the Lord and they merge into the Lord's body. And that's amazing, because for that liberation, many of the souls try for life after life, and they want to merge into the Brahman Jyoti. And that's the kind of liberation these souls are granted who are so sinful, so envious of Krishna. At the same time, Krishna shows his kindness to many demonic personalities in a very kind way that one cannot even imagine. When Kamsa, another demon we know about, who was so envious of Krishna that he wanted to kill him even at the time of birth, but he never knew that Krishna is more clever than anybody else. And all his plans were failed one after another. When Putana was sent to Krishna to kill Krishna, she applied this Kala Kuta wish on her breast and wanted to feed Krishna with this poison so that Krishna can be killed. But she did not have an iota of understanding that this Krishna was looking like a little boy, a supreme personality of Godhead, who is controlling each and every activity and every activity of the entire universe and of all the living entities. So when Krishna started sucking her milk, he even sucked her life air, and she could not maintain her beautiful body that she came with, and she reverted back to her original, very ugly, very huge, large body, and ran out of the Nand Maharaj's house. Now, at this point in time, when she died, Krishna awarded her the most beautiful place in the spiritual world. This is the verse, Aho Bakiyam Kalakutam. Aho Bakiyam. I can't remember the full verse right now. Aho Bakiyam Stan Kalakutam. So this is the verse that Sukdev Goswami heard in the jungles. And when he heard that Krishna is so merciful, so kind, that this lady who came with an intention to kill him, he granted this person the most exalted position of a nurse in the spiritual world, Dhatri, like a mother, parallel to Yashodamai, because Krishna did not see that this person came with envy to me. Krishna saw the Vasalya, Bhav, that she has come to give me milk. And he considered that as a devotional service. So Krishna is depicting so many means and ways as to how he is so kind. So reading this verse, if somebody concludes that Krishna is unkind, that will be a completely inconclusive and incomplete understanding of what Krishna is. So Krishna is saying here, do not tell this to those who are not austere, those who are not devoted. Now, Srila Prabhupada is explaining in the purport, even though you have austerity, but you're not devoted, even though you know Krishna as a God or as someone who is a great personality, and you have understanding of Gita, but you are not in devotional service, in Krishna consciousness, you will not be able to understand Krishna. You will not be able to understand Krishna. Now, this living entity who is constantly fighting with his senses, constantly fighting with his mind, with the desires, he's acting like a ghost who is mounted on his head and forcing him to act, to fulfill the desires which are constantly, infinitely generated from the reservoir of mind. Mind is constantly generating these desires to enjoy separately from Krishna, desire to enjoy from the senses and with the material energy. This material matter, which has nothing to do with the spirit soul at all, which can only interact with the sense objects which are made of matter. So matter interacting with matter, and living entities trying to enjoy through the senses. In such a situation, when his heart is full of material desires, full of enviousness to Krishna, it doesn't appear to be like that when we live our day-to-day life. But when we analyze it philosophically, we will find that all our desires, which are enjoying separately from Krishna, are defined as lust, and they are born out of envy of Krishna. So in such a state of mind, when living entity has his heart, which is completely full of lust, envy, greed, kama, krodh, lobha, mad, moha, matsarya, he's fighting with he's struggling with his senses. Manasasthani indriyani. Manasasthani indriyani. Prakriti sthani karshyati. Mind, manasasthani, with 6 mind and senses, is struggling, living entity, constantly battling with it. Sometimes those who are trying to become devotees, they are battling. And sometimes those who are conditioned souls, they are constantly battling. They may not realize that. When you are floating in a river, and if you just float, then the water of the river will take you in the direction where the river is going. And if you're happy going in that direction, which may be eventually to the sea, in the depth of the water body, then that's your destination. But if you think that this is not the right direction and you decide not to float with the river, that's the time you will struggle with the with this river water to come in the right direction. So those who are devotees, they're constantly fighting with the senses to come in the right direction. But those who are not devotees, those who are going along, they do not feel the pressure and force of the material modes of nature, but they're controlled by the material modes of nature. They're constantly suffering the happiness and miseries of this material world. They have to just go through the flow of the material world. Constant distress, constant anxiety, constant miseries. It's a very pathetic state of situation. So in such situation, a living entity who is envious, matsarya, will not be able to understand anything which is divine. And Krishna has also explained that lust is in 3 phases. He's given the analogy of lust, which is born of envy, that lust like a smoke in the fire, or like mirror, dust on the mirror, or like a child or a womb. So he's compared the living entities with the smoke in the fire, because there's some smoke, it's very transparent. That means living entity can be propagated to Krishna consciousness, propelled towards Krishna consciousness. But whereas he has compared the child in the womb to the tree. Now, tree is like a jarjeev, it's like a matter. It's very difficult to propel it to Krishna, towards Krishna consciousness. Whereas other birds, beasts, etc. are compared to like a dust on a mirror. They can't see beyond our distance, and they cannot understand Krishna. And therefore, living entity is in a most suitable position. Now, for the envious person, there's a beautiful conversation, a letter written by Srila Prabhupada, and he's saying that Chanakya Pandit says there are 2 kinds of envious entities. A snake is apparently very, very envious. A snake and an envious person. Of the 2, the envious person is more dangerous, because the snake can be brought under control by chanting mantras or herbs, while the envious person cannot be controlled by any means. You see, the envious person is more dangerous. If there's a choice to be with a snake or an envious person, it is being said that choose the snake and leave the envious person, because that envious person will leave your consciousness completely contaminated. So this is the verse, the backdrop of what I was discussing. Yado paramo manasunama rupa rupasya dashti smriti sampramoshat ya iyate kevalaya swam sanstaya hansaya tasmai suchi satmane namaha. When one's consciousness is completely purified of the contamination of material existence, gross and subtle, without being agitated as in the working and dreaming state, when the mind is not dissolved in sushupti, deep sleep, one comes to the platform of trance. Now, opposite of that, then one's material vision and the memories of mind which manifest name forms are vanquished. Only such a trance is the Supreme Personality of Godhead revealed. Thus, left us offer our respectful obeisance unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's seen in the uncontaminated transcendental state. So this has to be the state of consciousness in which you can understand Krishna. Whereas the opposite consciousness, which is reflection of the consciousness of the spiritual world, is something which is envious of Krishna, cannot understand Krishna at all. So this is what Krishna is describing about the demonic souls. Chapter 16. Ahamkaram balam darpam kamam krodham cha sanshritaha mam atma paradeheshu pradishyanto abhyusuyakhaha. Bewildered by false ego, strength, pride, lust, and anger, demons become envious of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in their own bodies, in the bodies of others, and blaspheme against the real religion. This is what we just discussed, how demonic people are continuously envious of Krishna. And because they are envious of Krishna, here Srila Prabhupada is saying, because they are envious to Krishna, they are envious to everyone. And the opposite also true, because a devotee loves Krishna, he loves everyone. And Krishna, Prabhupada is saying, this is the philosophy. This is the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. See, the point is that when we do not have certain things in our heart, then we cannot see it either. And I can give an analogy. I was reading in science book that the lower species of insects, etc., they are unable to see all the colors like humans see. And some of them see everything like black and white, like we see it in the night. So, however hard I try to explain to this species that, look, they are beautiful colors, vibrant, vibrant colors, rainbow colors, he will not be able to see it. There's no chance, because that facility is not there, because he can't see it. He can't see it. It doesn't exist in him, so he can't see it. Similarly, we can see that if certain qualities are not within us, contamination is not within us, we will not be able to see them. If therefore the devotees who are of highest stature, pure devotees, they do not have envy in their heart. So they do not see enviousness in everybody, anyone. They do not see that this particular living entity he's talking to is envious. So they only see the kindness and love, and they feel compassion for this living entity. And in that sort of setting, they are continuously being merciful to the conditioned souls. So the qualities that we want, godly qualities, if we develop these godly qualities in due course of time, we will not see those contaminated qualities in anybody else also. Similarly, if we continue to practice the devotional service to the best of our ability, then eventually we will get rid of envy. And then we will not see this enviousness in anybody else. And then we will be able to love Krishna without envy. Now, Srila Prabhupada has explained that there is some sort of transcendental rivalry in the spiritual world also. This envy is not material in the spiritual world. He's saying even the gopis, they are envious of one another in a transcendental sense. They were thinking, oh, she has attracted Krishna more than me. That is very nice. She has given him more pleasure than me. Now let me try more to please him. That is the process, how to improve in Krishna consciousness. When we see more advanced devotees, when we are non-envious, you will find that they are continuously inspiring us. And when we want to compete in a manner that we give pleasure to our guru, to sadhus, and to all the Vaishnava communities, and even to the one who we are competing with, but in a transcendental way. So that competition is very different from the competition of the envious people of this world. We know the very second verse of Srimad Bhagavatam talks about Dharma projita kaitava attaparmo nirmarat saranam satam. This word nirmat saranam satam. Yadyam vastavamat vaschavadam apapyolanam. The three modes, the three material miseries, they will get uprooted. They will only get uprooted if we do not have this envy. If we have this nirmat saranam. Mats is envy, nirmat saranam, one who is 100% pure in the heart. Then when this heart is 100% pure, then all his material miseries will be uprooted, completely taken off, excavated out from his experience and consciousness. This is how Srimad Bhagavatam is also describing that. Okay, so I think we'll perhaps end here. And if there are comments or there are any questions, we can take those comments and questions now. Yeah. So there is this verse, since nobody's asking a question, where Krishna is also saying that what happens to those who continue to stay envious? Tan aham dushtah kruran samasareshu naradhaman shipamya ajasaram ashubhan ashurishya eva yonishu. Ashurishya eva yonishu. Those who are envious and mischievous, who are the lowest among men, I perpetually cast into the ocean of material existence, into various demoniac species of life. So this, Srila Prabhupada is saying that, why not? Somebody again can feel, oh, how can Krishna be God? He's sending everybody to demonic planets. So, in answer to that, Srila Prabhupada is explaining very nicely that, why not? Krishna is always giving everybody what they want. Krishna has created his material energy to reciprocate with desires of the living entity. If the desire of the living entity is to obtain Krishna, Krishna will facilitate that. If the material energy will facilitate that. If the desire of the living entity is to become demoniac, become envious of Krishna, try to become controller, try to become enjoyer, try to become proprietor, then material energy is obliged to give him that kind of facilities and circumstances. The more you become demoniac, the more more suitable planets are made for that demonic personalities, wherein you can feel that you are always in control. For example, if you go to hellish planets, in hellish planets, the technology is very, very advanced. So advanced that we can't even imagine. With that kind of technology, living entities constantly feeling that they are in control. There is no other controller than them. And with that kind of intensified desires and emotions, they're living their life, not realizing that they are absolutely not in control, zero control whatsoever. And all that is they are controlling is some of the desires, they're trying to fulfill those desires through the body, agency of body, mantra rudani maya. That's all. Otherwise, nothing else is in their control. So when Krishna is saying, I cast them, means that Prakriti is created in such a way that it will reciprocate with our desires. When we desire to become wonderful devotees of the Lord, then we can easily surpass this ocean of misery. But if you want to take up the path of becoming envious, then that is also available, and we can easily glide into the hellish planets, live in those kind of planetary system where you will not be given an opportunity to recognize or to know about Krishna. So anybody has any comments or question?
Prabhuji, about envy. Now, is it possible to eradicate envy? I mean, it's kind of a disease, and it's only the person that has that feeling suffers, isn't it? So it doesn't affect the other person unless they're vicious and they go out of their way to plan some attack of some kind. So is it, my question is it possible to eradicate it? Because the person who is envious and whatever reason they're hanging on to it finds it difficult to shift it, and so there's something about, it's a silent disease, really.
Yeah, so
it's not always showing itself, and if it shows itself, it means you're looking out to see it, and when you see it, you become part of it, I suppose. Does it make sense?
Very deep question. Yes, it does. So envy is one of the most difficult one in the 6 anarthas, Kam, Krodh, Lobh, Mad, Moh, Matsarya. One can overcome lust, greed, pride, attachments, but it's very, very difficult to get rid of envy, because envy is the very cause of our separation from Krishna. Now, is it possible? The answer is yes. When we convert our lust into love of Krishna, that's the time when we become non-envious of Krishna. When we become non-envious of Krishna, when we become devotee of Krishna, then Prabhupada just explained in one of the verses I was reading, that means that one would not be envious of anyone else, because one would be always loving everybody. So is it possible? Answer is yes. Is it difficult? Answer is yes. Very, very difficult. Krishna has already said, Mam Maya Durattaya. Krishna has said that my material energy. Krishna is saying it's my material energy. It's me. I am one person. I have internal energy. I have external energy. It's my energy. How a living entity who's so insignificant, infinitesimally small, can ever overcome material energy? Not possible. But Krishna has put a condition there. Right? Although he's saying Mam Maya Durattaya, he's also saying that Mam Evye Prapadyante. Those who have surrendered unto me. And that is the point he's making in this verse also, that if you are envious, you will not be able to understand me. But if you are in devotion to me, if you are performing your charities, your japa, your tapa, you're doing your navada bhakti, you are in devotion with me, then you will be able to overcome this material energy. Overcoming material energy means what? Overcoming the feeling of being envious to Krishna, actually. And that's how we can overcome this material energy, by the mercy of Krishna. And how the mercy of Krishna will come, that process is also explained. The mercy of Krishna will come because Krishna is residing in the heart of the devotees. Mercy of Krishna will come through the devotees of Krishna. This envy is so rigid, so difficult to get rid of. But if we get devotees like Srila Prabhupada to serve, then the mercy of Gaurang Mahaprabhu will come upon us. And by doing so, we will, in due course of time, get rid of this disease. It's a very, 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 very chronic disease. We'll get rid of it So that hope is there for sure, Julie Mataji. Hare Krishna. Okay, so there's no more questions here. It's 42 past. If there's any comment, etc., we have 2 minutes. All right. So therefore, we now close this session of today. It was about enviousness, about not telling this beautiful, glorious, confidential knowledge to those who are envy, because they will end up doing more harm to themselves by blaspheming Krishna. So it's better not to explain them, but we give them holy names by chanting in the streets. We give them prasadam, and we give them books of Krishna. So in due course of time, when they get purified, then their envious nature will drop down and they'll be able to develop devotion towards Krishna. And that's the secret of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, that in due course of time, even those who are envious will be turned into favorable situation with Krishna consciousness. So with that prayers, now we close our session today. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Shri Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhuji.
Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.